Hi, how you doing? And welcome to my February 2022 bullet journal setup. January was quite a hectic month as I had COVID for most of the month and really just kind of focused on gathering my thoughts and researching schools that I was planning to apply for grad school, along with design competitions that I was interested in at the time. To start out, I'm going in using there's actually an architecture scale that I'm using as a straight edge. I think it's just because it's the quickest and easiest thing for me to find. I know I have some rulers around here somewhere, but it's always sitting on my desk, so it's the first thing I reach for a straight edge. And I'm continuing to use the Pigma microns that I have left. I really desperately got to get some new ones. And the theme this month, I wanted to go for something really keeping with that minimalistic vibe. So I went for a geometric style theme. So I essentially created a sketch of squares on top of squares on top of squares, all intersecting each other. And decided to use different pen line weights to give it some form of depth. Now I'm going in with my Tombow Fudenosuke pen or brush pen. I'm actually in the process of learning calligraphy. I really want to get good at calligraphy someday, and I've drastically improved since I first started in 2020, but there's definitely still some little iffy things that need to be worked out. But what's awesome about calligraphy is it's very easy to start as a beginner because you don't necessarily have to have all the knowledge and skills. And there's always a ton of ways to rewrite different letters in calligraphy. That's what I like about calligraphy the most. It's the very versatile version of hand lettering. And you can really make your own personal signature to it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a horrible habit of let's make up the color palette as I go. So in my brain, I know like what colors would be complementary and like what would be best, but I always like to swatch a marker on a paper before I take it into my journal because I want to make sure I'm really happy for that because I'm going to be looking at it for a whole month. So that's always the goal, is that you want your pages to be, I wouldn't call an aesthetically pleasing, but more just pleasing to your own personal eye, because at the end of the day, it is your artwork. So you see a lot of moments like this. That's what I call my thinking hands, where I'm just kind of staring at the page like, do I want to do this color or do I want to do this? I don't know. So I decided to go ahead and just go for it. I decided to do some blues and greens for my overall theme. I just felt like, I don't know, those felt like the right colors for me for the month. It just sets the vibe and sets the mood. And these markers that I'm using, I got them from Amazon. They're called Art and Fly is the brand. They're dual-ended brush pens. One end has a brush, the other a fine liner, which you can see I'm using to go in there and trace around the edges of the squares to start creating some two-tones. And I love these markers because, one, they're very, very affordable. And I've always wanted to have Tombows, but this was something to really just kind of get used to having a brush marker or a brush pen. They're definitely really beginner friendly. Now I'm just going in with good old reliable colored pencils. Colored pencils have never failed me. It's always been probably one of my favorite tools to use. I used to have a whole range between like Crayola, watercolor colored pencils, and just every colored pencil you can think of. I've owned it at one point in time. And I wanted to just let the drawings have some sort of like that two-toning vibes, like through those two different materials. But unfortunately, I didn't exactly have a green colored pencil that matches exactly with that forest green contrasting to the bright green. So I had to overlay brown, dark green, black, and just start really mixing the colored pencils together. And that's what I love about colored pencils too. You can very easily mix colors together, all based on like the amount of pressure you put on the paper. And then I just realized, you know what, something's missing. This feels disconnected. So I decided to let the frame interplay into this corner piece of artwork that accents the page and run a fine tip set of blue lines. In architecture, we would call these probably construction lines. They're meant to be like those ghostly lines that are guiding you in the drawing or guiding your eye in the drawing as well. Now we're jumping into the next page, and this is where my calendar goes, and I don't really put a ton on that first intro page. I usually just kind of use it as both a placeholder and an overview for the month. So I put like a little place for my goals if I want to write some ideas down or things that I'm working towards my yearly goals within that month. Important, so like it could be important dates, important things to remember, and noteworthy. I always like to keep one category somewhere, whether it's noteworthy, gratuity, just a place to gather positive affirmations or positive thoughts, or even milestones and accomplishments as I'm working through my goals, or even just on my day-to-day life and things that happen within any given day. And I kind of went for a rectangle with the chamfered ends with them slanted off. It just felt right. It felt like it went with the theme the best. And for some reason, it was a lot of fun to draw these boxes, and I don't know why. It just was. Now I'm just going in there and adding some drop shadows to those boxes. I really wanted a bit more of an accent up there than just those solid lines. It felt right. And because I did a blue trim frame on the cover page and then it was green for the geometric artwork piece, I decided to go the opposite way because that felt more complimentary, and I didn't want there to be just two big bold blue lines. It just felt right to invert it and go the other way around. A lot of the decisions I make as far as, you know, the artsy pieces of my journal, they really are very much improv. I kind of just go with my intuition and roll with it. And if this seems right, it seems right. The only things I ever sketch out in advance are just the overall idea of things. Like, for example, I know I would have never been able to do these like geometric style squares or like overlapping them or thinking about it without first sketching it out first. I am a huge sketcher. I've been like that since forever. When I started in fine arts in middle school, and then once I got to high school, I branched more into graphic and digital design. But there's something about pen and paper. Those things never leave you, especially when you're first starting out and just discovering who you are as an artist, or even who you are as a person. So to give an accent against that blue, I decided to yank out some of my gel pens and start testing the neon colors that I have. This one is extremely old. I can't even tell you really where it came from. I've had it for probably over 6 years, but it does still work, believe it or not. It just doesn't show up very well. So instead of using that one, I just went in for this Jelly Roll neon green to write the days of the week. And I personally like doing Monday through Sunday and not Sunday through Saturday, mostly because Monday through Fridays are hectic enough for me as it is between the office that I work at and going to the gym, that I usually don't really have much going on during the week. So this is just an easier way for me to set up in my journal, especially if I decide later on in my weeklies that I want more space on the weekends. And that is it for the opening spread. I am so happy with the way this turned out. I love the pops. Of course, the first thing I always do before I flip the page with Jelly Rolls is I test it with my finger to see if it dried, because I have had plenty of oopsie accidents where the pressing into the page has caused it to smear on the other side, and that's no fun, especially when you really need to, one, be able to read what you wrote, and also I am a fan of white space, so I have a thing when my white space gets messed up. It's not the vibe. So for the next spread, I'm going to be using my calendar stamps. I pre-stamped them in my last video just to save some time, but I figured with this video, it would be more fun to show a bit more of my thinking process and what I really do when I start to place these in. And I'm just using a basic little stamping block. You can get those really cheap. I picked mine up at Michael's, but it took me forever to find those. I had been using one that was extremely large and very hard to press on with these calendars, so I was so happy when I got a set that had them in different sizes. It's much easier to grip especially when you're using these silicone type of stamps. And I am down for any advice on how to store these or keep these clean, because I usually clean them on a daily basis whenever I do use them, and I usually do it right afterwards, but I wish there was a better way to store them. I've seen people store them with like slip pockets and dividers or page covers, and I don't mind those, but I guess I'm just looking for a more efficient way where I can see them, since that method typically involves putting them in a binder. And now I really am beginning the process of kind of just measuring out like the general size of what the calendar is and how many spaces it's roughly gonna be. It's never an exact science anytime I do this. It's more just, I think this is the way I'm gonna do this. But I figured that would be the easiest way to do it. And for this month, because I am actually just starting to get back into habit trackers, I hadn't done habit trackers in the last 3 months in my 2021 bullet journal, because my life was already getting kind of crazy between leaving a contract job that I had and starting a new one. But now I'm kind of ready to start tracking my habits again. So some of the habits I'm going to track this month are my water intake. I try to go for what is equivalent to 8 glasses of water a day. And I really want to get 8 hours of sleep. I am awful about sleep. I don't know what it is. When I go to bed, there's just things I think about and that keep me up at night. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I think we all have those nights where you're just staring at the ceiling thinking about just different things in life, and even things as crazy as, wow, how did I get here? I've definitely had a lot of those moments this year. And some other habits, the days I don't spend any money, because I am now almost 2 years out of college and really need to save money like 24/7. And then my skincare, 3 meals a day, because I am awful about my eating schedule. I don't know what it is. I think it's because I was always so busy in college that for the longest time I would go so long without eating and I wouldn't even notice, because I'm one of those people that until I get something done, I won't stop to eat. I'll be so focused on accomplishing the task that I either won't eat or I'll forget to eat. And the last habit I'm going to track is I'm going to try to start reading 30 pages in my book today. I am currently reading The Whiskey Rebels by David Liss, and it truly is a novel. It is over 500 pages long in all its glory, and it's kind of been sitting on my shelf for Lord knows how long. And I've just decided, you know what, I really want to start reading again, and it seemed like a really good read. And then I kind of felt like this page, it was missing something. So here I go, deciding to sketch in another square on top of squares to continue in with that geometric pattern. And I was actually really interested in doing it in the center of the page and letting it bleed out into the page. I felt like there was something more exciting about that instead of letting it sit in a corner or going together. I don't know what it is. I love things that are in vertical orientation. That's actually really my dream in my field with architecture. I really want to design, renovate, or remodel skyscrapers, and even design really interesting exteriors of those buildings. I love skyscrapers. I love vertical movement. I love how spaces come together in what we would call a vertical datum. To me, it's fascinating. I find it way more fascinating than any other building that I've ever attempted to design, or any other structure that I've been interested in looking into. So that is the dream. The dream is to end up working at an architecture firm in New York City, because I've always wanted to live in New York City. Even if it's only for a year, I just want that experience of living in one of the best cities in the world. And now moving on to the next page in this spread, this is kind of going to be my portfolio tracker. So currently I am working on my both professional and academic portfolios. I've really been messing around with it this year, and I love a lot of the projects I did in the past, but a lot of them really needed more work, mostly because I had a lot going on when I was in college, both family, personal, professional, just a lot happening all at once, like it is for most people in college. Everyone's lives are kind of all over the place. And those 4 years between what the average age, 18 to 22, most people are really just rediscovering who they are and themselves. Because before then, you were never really out on your own. And then you're really kind of just going through this whole coming of age at a very drastic like time frame with the 4 years. So I had a lot going on, and I didn't really get as much opportunity to work on those projects or really give them the amount of time that I really feel they deserved. So some of them I'm giving like a second look at. Some of them need some touch-ups, and I went ahead and picked the projects that I know I'm going to do for the graduate applications and the projects I've chosen for my professional portfolio. Because I've been out of school for 2 years in my professional portfolio, it's going to be critical that I do have some real world projects. I do have 2, and I'm really excited to be putting those in. It's like, oh, I really am an architect now. Like, I'm an architect in training. It's really happening. I'm designing stuff, and I'm really fully a part of this process. So that's always really exciting, to really revisit old projects and revisit old versions of design. I always find it so much fun, and honestly, it's a great way to look back on a lot of good memories that I had throughout college, even in the late nights of studio. Architecture school is not for the faint of heart. I usually say architecture school is law school for 4 years for your undergraduate degree, which is why I'm terrified to go back to school because I know what it means. A lot of late nights. We're going back to probably 2, 3 in the morning, but I'm much better at time management now. So fingers crossed. And for the first 2 weeks of the year, I've decided to go with a rolling weekly Dutch door. And oh yes, the scissors. Some people are a bit scared to take scissors into their journal. Me, I've never been scared to cut some pages. It saves me space, and honestly, it just works much better for me and my overall habits. And I'm deciding to just stamp the dates and days of the week with these letter block stamps. My mother actually got me these as a Christmas present in 2020, and I love these things. I'm pretty sure she got them from Amazon, but I'm not certain. Don't take my word on that. I do love that they have a really kind of unique type font. They're not like a typical typewriter looking font. They have a bit more of embossing. There's something in between, like I would say like a Times New Roman and Arial type of font. And you don't see stuff like that very often. So I love them. They've held up really well so far in these 2 years. And I don't know what it is about stamps. I love stamps. I have two whole drawers in my office full of stamps. And I use stamps constantly throughout, especially my personal journal when I'm collaging. And now we are putting those stamps away and also going to wash my hands because I am awful about stamp ink. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm left-handed. It's like the left-handed struggles. You always get like tons of ink or like graphite smears all over your hand because that's when you are left-handed, you're dragging your hand across the page of words that you've already either written or drawings you've already made. So because of that, it causes a lot of those problems. That's why I never really try that hard to keep my hands clean whenever I'm setting up my journal or if I am doing art in my personal journal or collaging. I clean up as I go. It's just much more therapeutic for me that way. So to continue with this theme of chamfered rectangles for the weeklies, it just felt right. It's the same thing. It's like if it feels right, you just got to do it no matter what. You should always go with your gut. I always tell people that if you have in your gut that this is right for you, then you should just go for it. And if you also have a gut feeling that maybe this isn't for you, you should probably listen because that's not just your brain, that's your intuition. And ignoring your intuition is a very dangerous thing. At least that's in my mind. It can be. And we've made it to the end with the flip through. I love flipping through whenever I finish. I also started filling out certain spaces because this was the first week of February that I was setting this up because I was a little behind in doing some things between work and just kind of gathering some thoughts and finding the time. But again, if you made it to the end of this video, I applaud you. I am grateful for you, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one for my March setup.